The opinions and viewpoints expressed in .NET Rocks are not necessarily those of its sponsors, or of Microsoft Corporation, its partners, or employees. .NET Rocks is a production of Franklin's Net, which is solely responsible for its content. Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter.
Rockheads, stop tweaking your Longhorn and listen up. It's time for another stellar edition of .NET Rocks, the internet audio talk show for .NET developers with Carl Franklin and Rory Blythe. This is Karen Cavallero here to announce show number 61 with guests Vic Gundotra, Steve Cellini, Lenn Pryor, and other members of the Microsoft Longhorn Evangelism team. Recorded live Friday, April 23rd, 2004. .NET Rocks is brought to you by Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter, and now offering hands-on VB.NET and ASP.NET classes remotely. Online at www.franklins.net. And by Data Dynamics, makers of ActiveReports.NET. Simple, powerful, and cost-effective reporting for Windows Forms and ASP.NET web applications. Online at www.datadynamics.com. Support is also provided by Code Magazine, Microsoft Technologies in-depth for IT managers and developers. Online at www.code-magazine.com. And now, the man who's sick and tired of making up these dumb jokes week after week, Carl Franklin.
Thanks, Karen. Karen Cavallero, everybody. How you doing? It's been a nice week in Lake Wobegon, my hometown, out there on the prairie. No, that's another show. But it has been a nice week, and this is Carl, and you're listening to .NET Rocks. With me in the studio today in New London, Connecticut, is none other than the a little bit under the weather, but still groovy, Rory Blythe.
Yeah, a little bit under the weather, possibly Lyme diseased. After all my joking and talking about it, I think it's really incredible that of all the people, it's me.
How ironic is that, man?
Yeah, it's more like Alanis Morissette ironic, though, where it just sucks.
Yeah, but she didn't really understand the word, right. Apparently.
But, yeah, it's... I really didn't expect it. I joked about it. I teased people about it. I talked about it, but I didn't actually...
Because you were, freaked out about ticks. As soon as you got here, somebody told you, oh, watch out for the ticks. They carry Lyme disease, and you're like, where?
Yeah, that would have been Brian Jepson, my buddy who initially planted the seed of fear in my head. And then, of course, Jeff the sound man.
Right.
Didn't really help out too much. And then, of course, I get this flu-like symptom disease thing here after having some sort of a very itchy rash on my rightmost buttock.
Yikes.
And,
I didn't need to know that.
And all these things put together kind of equal Lyme disease. So I'm being treated for that right now, and they're saying that provided I take the antibiotics as they have been prescribed, it will completely do away with the Lyme disease, and I will not suffer any of the further complications that often accompany untreated Lyme. Yeah, it's very good to know that my brain is not going to be eaten alive by these little Spirochete bacteria.
Very nice, very nice. I like the little medical spin we have this week, Rory. And many people don't know, but Lyme disease is all over the world, but it started right next door here in Lyme, Connecticut, which is not far from here.
It's true, yeah. Dublin has Guinness, and New London has Lyme disease, so everybody has their export,
Great. But, so it's probably not Lyme disease.
It's probably not, but anytime somebody comes into the clinic with this set of symptoms at this time of year in this part of the country, they choose caution.
Right.
And I mean, what did it cost me? Like $15 for the antibiotics?
Right.
They're like, do you really want to go along with this? And I'm thinking, well, let's see. Do I want to spend the $15 now or basically go crazy and, develop psychotic symptoms later on with arthritis? I think I'll spend the $15. Yeah, don't mess around.
So, Roy, I just wanted to say... something to you before we get started here.
I'd like you to say it to me.
Yeah, and the thing that I'm going to say is system.windows.forms.
Thank you for saying that to me.
Okay. And nobody knows what we're talking about, but that's okay. You don't have to know. As is our custom on the show, we give away something every week, And this week we're giving away something
syphilis.
Very nice. And it's sort of what everybody's been waiting for these last couple of weeks. Ooh, excuse me. Pardon me. That was my microphone. And it's something that people have been waiting for these last couple of weeks that we've talked about for 2 weeks now. It's a ticket to Tech Ed.
Nice. You lucky bastard. You lucky bastard.
And we are actually not giving it away. Franklin's Net isn't buying it. Microsoft is giving it away through .NET Rocks as a sort of a thank you to our listeners for supporting us and supporting .NET and being such enthusiastic developers, and that's sort of what we're all about. So some lucky winner today who is listening live is going to win a ticket to Tech Ed.
Which is awesome. That's a nice prize. So.
Yeah, and if you're not listening live, you will have no way to know that this is happening. If you're listening to a downloaded version of this, sorry, contest is over. Don't email us, etc. Yeah, and Rich Pendleton says, tell him to be careful where he puts his buttock.
No, it's all been taken care of. Rash cleared up. Treating the disease.
Okay.
Everything's good.
So my week was pretty interesting, actually. I just got back a half an hour off the plane from Orlando, where we did last week's show. I did last week's show from Orlando, from my hotel room. You guys were here, and it was like the old days when we had Mark Dunn in Atlanta, and we would like FTP the MP3 files down and stitch them all together and make it sound like we're all in the same room. It was fun, but I thought it was a good show with Keith Please and Harry Pearson.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of positive feedback about it.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really, really looking forward to today, too. But now is the time in our show when we read the mail, and we actually have way more mail than we can possibly read and still have a 2-hour show. But I did want to read a couple of these because they were pretty great. So my trip started out as a couple of Inetta road shows at user groups, one in Huntsville, Alabama, and another one in Evansville, Indiana. And in Indiana, I met a guy named Bart, who says, and Bart Robinson, who's a very enthusiastic developer, and he says, hey, Carl, just wanted to say thanks for coming to Evansville and giving us a presentation. We loved having you. One interesting note about your presentation, which was, by the way, on objects in VB.NET, and I was showing sort of, reference types versus value types and metaphors, and then just solid understanding of the fundamentals. And he said, when it was over, I was talking with one of our members who just happens to be a former Java programmer that has since switched to C#. He was, quote, freaking out, end quote, after seeing your demos. He couldn't believe the blue squiggles and various other sweet features that VBNet has to offer. He comes to me and says, hey man, I had no idea the VB was so sweet. Why didn't you tell me about all of its great features? Tomorrow I'm going to give it a try. So being a fellow VB programmer, I thought that you would enjoy this little story. Thanks for everything you do for the community and keep on .NET rockings. And of course, we like all languages here, but I happen to be a VB programmer, and it's kind of nice when, it just goes to show you that it takes all kinds of programmers to make the world go round. And he says, and tell Rory to keep up the good work. He's a talented guy, and I think that most people enjoy what he brings to the show. Thanks, Bart Robinson. Well, Bart, you get a official piece of .NET Rocks useless crap, namely a coffee mug. And I know that you're going to just drink beer out of it anyway, so. Speaking of big cups, I got another one from Andrew Davey in Warwick University who won a mug. He just dropped a line that says, I've just returned to university after the Easter break. I just picked up my coffee mug that I won on the show. Man, that's one big mug. So now I'm fully tanked up on caffeine and getting maximum enjoyment from the excessive bubble wrap provided with the mug. Now my next challenge is to win me a copy of Windows Server 2003. I think people are catching on that, you send email, you suck up a little bit to Carl and Rory.
And you win something.
I think they're catching on. Had another one here. I'm going to just leave out the really long ones here. And
we had a lot of good mail this time.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff you forwarded me was really entertaining. Kind of made me mad because they're going to make better radio than what we're going to be talking about.
Absolutely.
The way that we talk, they were just too witty, too good, some of them. So made us look bad. But
yep.
all the same.
Some of these are really, really great. Oh, here we go. Okay, this is a great one. You remember the Google Weirdos where you talked about Somebody came to your website by talking about cow testicles or something.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, it was a strange one. I mean, that was pretty weird. But anyway, this is a guy, Roy Forkner, who's from Texas, who wanted to set the record straight. He says, Carl, I was listening to the April 12th, 2004 .NET Rocks and heard Rory talking about cow testicles. I wanted to update him that cows are female and don't have testicles. Only bulls have testicles. If a bull is now he's from Texas, right?
Right.
If a bull is castrated, he becomes a steer. The saying is, get his mind off. No, I'm not going to say that, actually, Roy. That's one of those colorful colloquialisms that's dirtier than just the scientific name for, testicles. Tell him that calf fries, bull calves are generally marked at early age, are very tasty. And I'm not even going to ask what those are. Anyway, he just wanted to set the record straight, and I said, hey, Roy, we actually know that, but sometimes in order to be funny, you have to bend the rules a little. And he said, hey, Carl, if I'm not mistaken, I was the only Texan VB programmer at your class, such and such a time, and I'm programming with .NET, and your class was extremely helpful. I'll keep the calf fries fresh just in case. Roy, no thanks, okay? No thanks, pal.
Maybe calf fries are like little balls of eel. Can I say that?
Oh, man.
I thought it was great, though, that he took the time to write in and say that. A good little tongue-in-cheek email there.
Right.
I thought that was good stuff.
Yeah.
And just for the record, just so everybody knows, I found that search. I'm just the messenger. Although that said, I still would have talked about cow testicles and not really realized the technical problem therein.
Another one, Dave Schwinn. This is a great one. This will be the last one. Dave Schwinn says, Carl and Rory, love the show. Having listened to every episode to date in my car while driving to customer sites, I must say that the last two shows, Bob Resselman and Keith Please Harry Pearson, without a doubt have been my favorites.
Sweet.
Yeah, nice. I actually listened to them twice. Wow, here's a dedicated fan.
Need a 12-step for this guy. But
yeah. I also purchased Bob Resselman's book and really enjoyed that as well. I'm a networking consultant in Cincinnati, but I've dabbled in programming all my life. I started using VBNet when it was in beta, and I'm simply blown away by the power and ease of development. I use every opportunity I can to insert .NET solutions into my daily chores. I'd like to share a success story. Using less than 50 lines of code, I have written an assembly in VBNet to merge Windows 2000's SMTP service with the open-source spam filtering product Spam Assassin. I use the SMTP service's event sync to invoke my assembly, which in turn invokes Spam Assassin, a Perl script. Using this technique, I am able to successfully tag 90 to 95% of the spam coming into my company's and my customers' email domains while achieving an extremely low false positive count. I scan tens of thousands of email a day. The system has been in production since July and has never failed. I'm adding new features all the time, and VBNet makes it a breeze. How cool is that, man?
That's awesome. I'd actually like to see the code.
I would. I actually emailed him back. I said, hey, is this something you're going to give away or sell? And
he's going to tease us with it.
Yeah, the verdict's still out on that. He's going to let us know.
You can at least give it to us. I mean, just let us look. Curiosity.
Oh, boy. Okay, so do we have a Google Weirdos this week?
We do have Google Weirdos this week.
All right, here we go. So now is the time in our show when we like to do a little section we call the Google Weirdos, ladies and gentlemen.
Weirdos, 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 weirdos,
Google Weirdos,
weirdos, weirdos, weirdos, weirdos,
Google Weirdos,
weirdos, weirdos, weirdos, weirdos, weirdos, weirdos, weirdos,
Google Weirdos,
weirdos, weirdos. All right. So, for the uninitiated, for those who don't know, for the people in the dark who have been listening to the show in recent times, Google Weirdos is the little segment that I do where I comb the referral logs for my site, neapolian.com, and I look to see what search queries people use to either intentionally or completely and totally usually actually accidentally land on my site. And what I've found is that there are some absolutely bizarre people out there looking for some really weird stuff. I can't even use half the searches on the show because they're too dirty or messed up or just completely crazy. But I do pick out the cleaner ones, and I like to read them off, add a little bit of commentary, have a little bit of fun. But before I read those off, the people who do know Google Weirdos pretty well have learned that they can communicate with me through Google using it as a cheap one-way email system. So I get these little shout-outs from people, these little messages from people through Google Weirdos, and I like to read those first. So here we go. The first one is, Rory, don't skip Google Weirdos this week. Well, your wish is granted, my friend. I'm not skipping it.
Yeah, last week was a little too serious. Now we have to sort of...
Well, last week I was a little bummed.
Yeah.
I was a little down, but I'm feeling much better now.
Your skin is thickening, though, I can tell.
Well, it's also tanner. I mean, Orlando did wonders for me.
Yeah.
It was nice to have that little break in semi-tropical niceness. So moving along, we've got Rory Blythe looks like a bird. You know, one thing I love about knowing that my site and the show go out to a pretty decent quantity of people is that there's always somebody out there who's willing to help boost my self-esteem. So thank you very much. What I'd like to say is you have no idea, my friend. I had an MRI last year, and I got to see the skeletal structure of my head and some of the cartilage. I think it was cartilage. And if you look at my skull from the top down, it looks like a predatory bird of some type. Like it has this huge beak where the nose would be. It's hard to explain, but it's incredible. I tried to scan it, but it didn't work. So you are right, actually.
You're descended from a long line of birds.
Yeah, something. Moving along, we've got, I heard about Rory Blythe's website on the .NET Rocks show and thought it was pretty cool. I really like the stuff on the Pocket PC stuff, but since I'm a poor, starving college student, I can't afford one. Thanks, Rory. Josh L. at kakamar.com. So that's a pretty long one. I like those because people have gotten pretty clever at figuring out how to get these long search phrases to me. Next one is, Rory Blythe, I shall shut down your site. Bring it on, my friend.
Bring it on. You don't want to say that. Last time somebody said that, all sorts of bad things happened.
That's probably true. I mean, it's asking for trouble. But, yeah, not
and you don't
cool.
even control the site, so...
Yeah, there's not a lot I can do about it. It'd be nice if this person emailed me and mentioned why they want to shut down the site, but whatever.
How they're going to do it.
Next one is Rory MVP. Ho, 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 ho. Not going to find a lot there, because I'm not one. Yeah. Yeah, not that we need to reopen that wound. Hey, Rory Blythe, why don't you use Linux and Mono? Okay, well, I've used Rotor with OS X. It's not quite the same thing, but it's still something kind of .NET-y with something Nixy. But the main reason that I don't do it is that I don't want to. Next. Is Rory Blythe Carl Franklin's gay lover? All right, so these have to stop coming in. I get a lot of these, and I just want everybody to be absolutely clear. We broke up last month, okay? It's over, all right? Finally, when can I watch Rory Blythe dance naked? Well, how much?
He's the same guy who asked the last question, apparently.
Well, how much money you got? That's what I have to say. All right, I'll travel anywhere within the continental United States, or really outside of it, provided the price is high enough. So those are the shout-outs. And now we move on to the actual weirdos. These are the people who most likely did not mean to get to my site. They just had to search Google for their weird, nasty stuff. So the first one is Tidy Whitey's blog. I mean, that's just gross. I've never even liked that phrase. And why would I want to immerse myself in it to the point that I would be subscribing to some daily feed of information just about Tidy Whities? I think that's a little bit gross.
What is Tidy Whitey? I don't even know.
It's briefs, the white, normal, like Hanes briefs on guys, which are very functional, but some of the less appealing bits of garb that a guy can wear, they don't really make you feel very...
How did you know that?
Well, I mean, it's just, I thought it was common knowledge, but perhaps not. Okay, so next one is less anal leakage.
Oh, come on. Oh.
What, you want more? Is that what you're saying?
No.
I was thinking I'd like none.
I'd
like to just move on to
man.
none. No anal leakage, no
wrong.
more. We got to draw the line, just no more. So people stop doing that.
God. What are they looking for?
I honestly don't know. Maybe they've been eating Olestra chips or something. I don't know. So this one here is not very PC. All right, it doesn't have a bad word in it, but it's not PC. You might want to plug your ears or something. But it's phrased in an interesting way. And I can't believe somebody's searching for this. I'm serious. The retard ate the video.
Ew.
Ate the video. It's like some guy who's hanging out with his, drugged out buddy who, went on ahead.
What's his name there in the Something About Mary?
Sure. Yeah. Eating the video.
Yeah. No.
There's something about the phrasing there, and why is this person looking for it? Yeah. That's the way half of Google Weirdos is, though. You just don't expect it.
Yeah, it's just there it is, right in the log.
So here's one. Every time I see you walking by, I get a thrill, and you don't notice me, but in time you will. I must make you understand. What the hell is that? I didn't actually realize you were so serious. I'll try to pay more attention to you in the future.
That's not actually a lyric from a Tom Jones song or something?
I think it might be a lyric from something, but it's definitely nothing I've got on my side. I don't know how that got there. You got VB6 code, migrate AS400 database SQL. And I just wanted to say that I'm very glad that I'm not the one who's working on that project, because that doesn't sound pleasant. Moving on, we've got, is there a proper way to wash hands? And yes, as a matter of fact, and until they're clean is really my advice.
Rory's advice is as often as possible.
As often as possible, for at least a minute and a half using hot water and soap, and turning off the sink using a paper towel and exiting using a paper towel.
I was surprised that you let somebody shake your hand at Dev Connections.
They catch me off guard. I don't mean to let it happen, but if someone sticks their hand out and not really thinking, then I'll reach out, and when the hand touches, I go, oh man, what have I done?
But now you're contaminated, and you might as well just get it all dirty, because you're going to go to the bathroom in the next 2 minutes and wash.
Yeah, so I usually try to avoid it, but they did get me there. Moving on, we've got Tom Jones disease. I don't know what that is,
that's
but
what you
I've
have,
got it.
my
Yeah,
friend.
I guess it is. Guess something I've got. Next is grandmother triple clean eyelids. I don't know what that is. Twice cleaned is good enough for a lot of people. I don't even really know what eyelid cleaning is anyway. And lastly, the last Google weirdo of the week is urine smell in bathroom.
All right, you know what?
All I can say is that it sure beats urine smell on the couch.
We're gonna have to disinfect the Google weirdos here. This is just disturbing trend that's happening.
Well, that's what people are putting in there. That's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So
very strange.
Yep. So that is Google weirdos for the week. Weirdos.
And there you have it. Well, so much for the silliness part of the show. Now let's get down to it. We actually have some really interesting stuff to talk about today, because our guests are none other than Vic Gundotra and Steve Cellini from Microsoft, and they are in the realm of Longhorn Evangelism. So we're going to be talking about Longhorn. We're going to be talking a little bit about the stuff that they do. Let me introduce them. Vic is a general manager of the .NET Platform Strategy and Partner Group. He is responsible for broad-based evangelism and industry adoption of Microsoft platforms and technologies. He has held several positions over his 13-year career at Microsoft, including Director of Marketing and Director of the Microsoft Developer Network. Wow, very cool. Steve Cellini is a Senior Director in the Longhorn Client Evangelism team in the .NET Platform Strategy and Partner Group, responsible for Longhorn Client Evangelism and industry adoption. He has held several positions over his 6-year career at Microsoft, including Group Program Manager and Group Manager in various Microsoft products and services teams. Welcome, guys.
Hey. Hello, Rory. Hello, Carl.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi there.
Guys. Thanks for going through our super long titles, too. We appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely. And
I hope you know why we have such long titles.
Why?
Oh, it's because then we tell our bosses, hey, it's not our job. It's like, read your damn title.
It's not in the bio.
Do everything.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to personally thank you guys for bringing a little class to our otherwise silly and monotonous show.
Oh, you haven't heard us yet, so we haven't go that far.
Although, Carl, Rory, I have to tell you, this might be the highlight of my career. I'm not sure I've ever, I've done lots of press interviews before, lots of shows, but I don't think I've ever done a show before where we worked in itchy buttocks and cow testicles. Although the cow testicles thing, Steve and I were wondering if that was some sort of foreshadowing for our Longhorn discussion.
Oh, dum-dum.
Because actually, we do get that question quite a bit.
Yeah.
I'm glad we cleared that up.
And Longhorn, I suppose we should just say, is the name of a bar somewhere up in the Northwest, right?
Yes.
In Whistler, BC.
Right. And as we sort of have more and more products, we're getting, closer to that bar? Is that it? Or is that the final destination?
I think a bunch of folks were drinking when we came up with that. So it's kind of ambiguous as what we were thinking.
Yeah.
But we are running out of place names up here. So we're probably going to have to move to other locations.
Cool. Well, I personally want to tell you, I think you're doing a great job of getting information out about Longhorn. Obviously, the PDC was our first experience of it, in a big way. And what do you guys do when you wake up in the morning, you go to work? Let's start with you, Vic. I mean, what's a typical day like for for a guy with a title that I don't even want to repeat.
That we don't have time to repeat. Right?
I wake up in the morning trying to achieve my life's mission, which is my dream is to actually shake Rory's hand.
It'll never happen, man.
Yeah, I know.
Let me get in the bubble, and then we can shake, okay?
On a more serious note, what we do is, I think you read one of your readers' your letters from Bart.
Yeah, Bart.
Talking about VB. He says, I didn't know VB was so sweet. Why didn't you guys tell me?
Right.
That's kind of our job. I wake up in the morning, thinking about the Microsoft platform and the innovation that we're doing. And in the world we live in, where things are so complex and people have to listen and absorb so much information, sometimes the things that we're doing that are just so sweet don't get out there.
I hear you.
And so my job is to kind of distill down the messages, make things clear, simple, memorable, get the important stuff out to the developer community so that people are excited about our platform.
Vic, were you, I report to you, so I'd love to learn as much as possible about what you do. Were you born being able to do that? Or is this something that you learned or what? That's a tough question. I think anybody who does programming and loves their job has a natural tendency to want to tell others about it. And so I bet there's a lot of listeners too who are natural evangelists, although they don't have that in their title.
Right.
But, yeah. So I just get paid to do this. So this is pretty cool.
Right. And obviously that you're not actually going out and personally getting on weblogs and sending out emails and stuff. So what are the sort of the high-level groups that you manage that do the evangelism? I know the regional directors are, which I'm a part of, and the MVPs and all this other stuff, but what are some of the, from your viewpoint, from the top of the hierarchy, what are some of the your channels?
Wow. Well, we're a pretty big company, sometimes too big, I think, but we have just an enormous number of efforts that are going on to reach out to the community. Things like regional directors. We've got new exciting efforts like Channel 9, which I know you guys are going to talk about, which is fantastic. We have things like the PDC, and we have one-to-one on engagements. We go out and we actually visit customers, partners. We talk to them. I mean, it's just endless. And as you mentioned, the vast majority of evangelists on my team are out there writing blogs and communicating via news groups.
Right.
And so I could go on and on and on about the channels. Basically, there's no channel that we won't try to reach.
Right. The word evangelism sort of has a sort of car salesman thing to it, but it's sort of obvious in talking to you guys for just a minute that it's really not about hyping as much as it is about bringing information to developers. And because the developer crowd, I mean, what the demographic is like, very sensitive to hype, and they want to know what it is, how it works, and how to do what they want to do with it. And I see a lot of, what we do in the regional directors and dev days, and even on the show, as sort of answering those questions. And because that's how you get developers excited. You tell them about the technology, about what's coming up and what they can do with it and what they can't and what, how it's going to solve their problems.
We think that the best evangelists are evangelists who used to be developers or still are developers.
Absolutely.
Yes.
On my team, I've got my evangelists when they're not out there evangelizing, they're writing code. They're writing code using the latest Longhorn builds.
Yeah.
That's how they find out about stuff, and that's how they talk with authority and are able to make the connection to those, somewhat cynical developers who have seen it all.
Absolutely. I was just thinking the other day about how irritating it is, like when you start working at a company and say somebody in HR comes along and tries to talk to you in a technical fashion, even though they don't have any idea what they're talking about. It's sort of like when, when an adult tries to talk hip to a 12-year-old and it just doesn't work. So definitely making sure that your people are developers, that would go a long way. That's what I'd listen to.
Sometimes I go to HR and talk HR with them.
Resources, right?
Yeah, it's all the same, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember working in a startup company where there was a lot of money involved and we didn't really have a product shipped and we had a big staff, and after a while the CEO comes downstairs and he looks around at the developers. He says, "You know what? This is where it's all happening. These are the guys that are going to make this company profitable and make it work." And that's what Bob Russellman was saying. Developers are really powerful people.
Yeah, and in Microsoft, we just don't say that. We know it. I mean, everyone sometimes seems to forget that at our core, we're just a platforms company. And a platforms company means you're totally dependent on developers building solutions above your stuff. And so you're right that evangelism can sometimes have a negative connotation, but, at Microsoft, we kind of view the idea of evangelizing our platform, getting the messages out there about what the platform's capable of, as being core to our business. Adoption of our platform, that's Microsoft's, that's where our strength comes from. And any failure on our part there, of course, affects all the rest of our businesses. So we're pretty serious about it. And we just happen to do evangelism in a very kind of, we hope, a thoughtful and organized way. And I think the PDC that you guys attended was kind of an example of that.
So what about the academic side of things? I mean, that's one place where I think that evangelism is probably extremely important. Get them young, especially in a place where it seems that Sun and Java are a big player, really. Do you have anything to do with that? Do you get in there, or is that like a totally separate?
It's related. It's actually a separate organization, but very closely related. And you're right that it's very important, and we're at Microsoft trying to increase our focus in that area. I'm not sure we've done a fantastic job to date. I think there's lots of room for improvement. And part of that was our approach. Sometimes you can do evangelism, and if you do it wrong, it comes across as hype or disingenuous. And then it's time to come back and kind of reevaluate your approach. And I think we're in the midst of doing that. But we completely agree with you about the importance of reaching, that young audience.
My team runs the PDC, and at the last PDC, we tried to do something special on the academic side, and we only did just an okay job. We really want to do a better job there.
Is it, one of the reasons Apple was successful in reaching in schools was the fact that they gave them free Macs, and Sun, sort of does this with colleges. They give them free boxes. But you guys don't have hardware to give.
Well,
is that part of the problem?
We could try giving away free Macs, but it might really
Oh, God.
I like this guy.
Yeah. Hey, I'm desperately trying to make this better radio than the letters. It's a tough challenge. It's just Steve and I are still writing notes here back and forth, trying to figure out how we can work anal leakage into our.
God. No, please don't, please.
We have a team of 20 working on it right now.
Well, Channel 9 is the latest thing that you guys have done, and it's a really talk about. I mean, you go from white papers, right, which are sort of impersonal, to blogs, which are a little more personal, but still not as cool. And now you're like walking around with video cameras inside Microsoft and sitting down with these guys who are developing stuff and who are doing things. And that's just freaking awesome. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about Channel 9 now because we have an actual interview that we did, a spot that we did. We're going to play over the break. But that's just another example of evangelism going away from sort of mass market hype and getting really down to essentially what amounts to one-on-one sort of interaction with your core talent there.
Yeah, I'll tell you our philosophy behind some of our motivations behind our investments in things like Channel 9 and some of the other areas that we're investing in. It turns out that while there's a group of folks that are very enthusiastic about the Microsoft platform and doing great things, and we love them and we want to keep supporting them, as you all know, there's also a contingent of people who find Microsoft very distasteful.
Right. And the evil empire stuff.
The evil empire, and they're almost missionary-like in their zeal to highlight our errors.
We've used that word before on the show. So.
Yeah. And so, when we thought about the problem, we went out and actually talked to some people who basically admitted, look, we hate Microsoft. I know I went out and talked to a bunch of folks. And what I found was that, to a large extent, some of their concerns about Microsoft were driven by just misinformation. In fact, you asked them, hey, did you actually know anyone at Microsoft? And it turns out that they just never had a connection with Microsoft. And we found that we softened a lot of this negative emotion by just talking and starting the conversation with a lot of these folks. And we found out that, I know this sounds kind of obvious probably to you and your listeners, but ambiguity, lack of understanding of what Microsoft's intentions were, lack of clarity about the platform, that the lack of clarity and the ambiguity led to fear. And one of the best ways we found to just deal with the fear was to be more transparent. And, the PDC, we talked about Longhorn well in advance of it being shipped. To a large extent, that was driven by our desire to be more transparent, to be more open with the developer community, which is feedback we've heard consistently. And so things like Channel 9 are just part of that, being more transparent, being more open. It turns out that once people get to talk to you, they generally don't think you're the monster that they might have thought you were before they got to meet you and your kids. And so part of this is just opening up to developers and letting developers get to know us a little closer, and we're hoping that'll help improve the situation.
So at the PDC, though, there's a lot of sort of preaching to the choir where we're all nodding our heads and we're agreeing and we're saying, yeah, that stuff sounds really good. There'll be a few people there, of course, who aren't exactly like that. But how do you deal with the other side? I mean, do you send people out to infiltrate Linux user groups or something? I mean, how do you get the message out to the other side of the crowd? How do you even get them to pay attention to listen? Because some of them are really vehemently opposed and don't even want to give you any time just to listen.
Well, it's an incredibly tough challenge, and there's no easy answer here. If you think about a literal congregation, you do have to kind of preach to the congregation. You got to keep the strength of the congregation going, but also you do evangelism outside the congregation.
Right.
And so you're right, the PDC to some extent is about shoring up the congregation, and you're right that that tends to be something that's important and relatively easy to do. You highlighted the harder challenge. How do you go out to those folks that really aren't interested in your message at all? And we're still learning how to do that. If you or your listeners have ideas, let us know. We'd continue trying to win over people one by one. And then the other thing is to understand what are the dynamics that made people turned off to your message earlier, and see if you understand those dynamics, those behaviors, and stop those behaviors. And so I think, you've seen, particularly with Steve Ballmer, he's instituted some pretty significant changes inside the company. Those changes being about making us, myself, other Microsoft employees, a little bit more sensitive about how our actions are perceived in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Hey, we've made mistakes. We'll be the first to admit that. And then the trick is to learn from those mistakes and then try not to repeat those things.
Yeah.
We think, we think that thing takes time. When you change a behavior, it takes a while before folks really recognize that it's real. And we're kind of working through that process right now.
Getting back to the zealotry, we've both encountered, Rory and I have both encountered people who have been full of spite and everything and not wanting to look at stuff, and a little communication with a level head did the trick. Like you said, it's that fear. And they're now more willing to, a lot of these guys out there in the open source community who are looking at Windows are looking at Windows 95.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not rational. It's driven by fear, ambiguity.
Right. And it's not to today's technology either. Windows crashes. Yeah, well, it's Windows 95. It was the first. Yeah. It was version 1, right?
Yeah.
32-bit.
We kind of hope people don't judge us by what we did 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so I brought a guy up to my my server room, and I said, "You see that machine right there? That Windows 2000 machine? It's been running for 2 years, and I haven't rebooted it. I should take a look at that." So the other thing is that what is the other thing, Rory? I was going to talk about something.
Well, I actually have a question.
Okay, sure.
Because I'm not sure what you were going to ask, but one thing I was thinking is when you're coming up with ways of reaching people. You were talking about Steve Ballmer changing the image inside of the company and saying, okay, maybe we do have a few weaknesses, maybe we have made some mistakes. Do you ever come up with an idea that really opens up Microsoft and really shows some of its soft spots, maybe an Achilles heel, but you can't actually go public with it, or you can't actually use your idea because you have shareholders and you have people paying attention, and they might think that it's the company admitting weakness to too great an extent, where it would appeal to the people who want Microsoft to admit that it's not this big, perfect machine? Do you ever have problems with something like that?
We for the PDC, we did tons of brainstorming, and some of the ideas were pretty outlandish. And some of the ideas were sort of, middle of the road. It might work under the right situation. And frankly, Microsoft is a pretty big company.
Right.
And a lot of what we do, like any other company, we do have to get legal buy-off. And some of these ideas, sometimes the lawyers aren't quite ready to take that step.
Yeah.
We had some ideas about, awarding someone at the PDC, a week in Redmond where we'd walk them around and they'd be in meetings and participate.
That's cool.
And it sounded good to us. When we ran it by the lawyers, it was sort of silence and looking up at the ceiling, and then
it's kind of the way I'm reacting right now.
And then one of them spoke up and said, "Have you guys really thought about this?" And so that's an idea that I just remembered off the top of my head that we came up with. Channel 9 is a bit of an experiment,
right?
And you can imagine ways where that could go in directions where maybe the large corporate intelligence couldn't fathom really why would we want to do that. Sure, we have tons of ideas. At the last PDC, there were a lot of ideas that you saw and a lot of ideas that weren't so obvious that we put into play.
Do you guys ever get any feedback from? You must get a lot of feedback. Do you look at feedback you get at, say, conferences like the PDC on the evaluations and Dev Days?
Absolutely, we read. I personally read every written evaluation that came back from the conference. Some of them were pretty funny.
So
not at the level of anal leakage or anything like that.
All right, let's just get off of that word. All right?
Let's have to compete with that.
Until 10 o'clock, we're on that.
Hey, don't worry. But Steve and I are still trying to figure out how to work tidy whites into the conversation. We actually have a list of words we've got to work into the conversation.
Yeah, Microsoft, we're pretty hardcore about certain things. Anyway,
you didn't say anything.
All right. Well, my question was, do you get a lot of feedback? Maybe not at the PDC because it was all about the future, but I've been getting a lot of feedback from user groups and from Dev Connections, people who go to our conference. And I'm if you guys don't know, I'm half of the conference chair for the Visual Studio side of Dev Connections. Javal Lowy is the other half, and we pick the speakers that talk about the non-ASP.NET stuff. And we get some feedback. We're beginning to get it now, maybe because it's slipping, that there's too much focus on Whidbey and Longhorn and stuff that they can't have and they can't use. And are you getting that? I mean, I know it's a hard balancing act for you guys, because on the one hand, you want people to know what they're in for. You want them to know what they're going to have to do, what they're going to be up against, and people need to know that, what's coming up. But do you get that? Do you get stop talking about the details of WinFS, for example? Who cares? It's not ready.
Well, we get kind of two different sets of feedback, and sometimes they're diametrically opposed. Often what we hear from developers is, I love your stuff now, but I'm working on a project that's going to be a 2-year project. I need to have visibility into where your architecture is going. And you guys need to open up more and show us where you're going. We need more roadmap guidance so that we feel good about the investments we're making. And then we have to balance that, as you pointed out, because it turns out that oftentimes the stuff we're doing in the upcoming releases is very exciting. Yes. And it's easy to kind of fixate on the stuff that's coming and forget about the stuff that's here and now. And so we try to find that balance, educate folks on what's available today, at the same time provide clear roadmap guidance for where we're going. It's not always easy.
No,
sometimes we end up going too much to one side. Other times we oversteer too far to the other side. We have to
actually we're dealing with that at the conference at Dev Connections too, because we're picking the content. Obviously, we're trying to decide whether we should do a half-day pre-con on what's new in C# and what's new in VBNet, Whidbey, versus, do we do how to build an N-tier smart client with 2003? We're sort of having those debates right now. So I just, you guys have your finger on the pulse of the community out there.
No, we try. So
yeah. Well, pretty soon we're going to be going out to the. Hang on a second. Let me say that over again. Pretty soon we're going to be taking a break for the hour, but before we do, if you have any questions for Steve and Vic, you can go to www.franklins.net/call.netrocks and enter a question right there.
Can I ask a quick one while you're
doing
that?
Yeah, you sure can.
Have you guys ever wanted to have a way of delivering different messages by different channels? For example, something that you could get out to, say, just the Linux community that, say, your average consumer or shareholder or exec wouldn't really see. There wouldn't be any visibility there? Because it seems that would really give you a lot of freedom and flexibility in saying what you need to say to the right people without getting the word out too far.
Yeah, the problem is that today we live in a connected world. Anything you say to any community spreads to all other communities. Right. In fact, if you look at the Channel 9 stuff, which I know you're going to talk about, but one of the shocking things about Channel 9 was just the high volume of traffic we were getting from Linux users. And we realized a part of that was because of the traffic coming from slash.org. And so, these virtual communities cross-pollinate. And messages just kind of bleed from one to the other pretty quickly. Actually, I want to go back real quick to, Carl, your question earlier about, how do we balance the stuff that we talk about for the future as well.
Okay.
And one of the analogies that we use internally is kind of the behavior that happens when you blindfold somebody. You guys ever been blindfolded?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I always get that kind of reaction. And so, but like, even if you blindfold somebody in an area they're very familiar with, like blindfold somebody in their bedroom. I'm not asking you to do this tonight, but try it, and what happens, and watch the behavior of a person you blindfold. Even in an area where they know the surroundings very well, they immediately start to tippy-toe around, their hands go out, and they kind of very carefully walk around because they don't have visibility and they don't want to get hurt, and so they immediately slow down. And that's kind of what happens to our platform adoption. When we don't talk about the future, people don't have visibility into what we're doing. They put their hands out, even if they like the room and they're comfortable.
Right.
But it slows down adoption.
Wow.
And they try to get opinions from this guy and that guy who they trust and who really doesn't have any idea where anything's going.
Is the bathroom in that direction? Am I going to run into the TV if I walk over here?
That's right.
I'm thinking of something pretty cool we could do at the next PDC keynote.
Blindfold people?
Yeah.
Bill Gates, that's what...
Yeah, that's Bill walked
No,
up.
I'm talking to the audience, not the executive.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't,
either way.
as long as it doesn't involve wicking tickies or whatever the heck those things are.
Yeah.
Tidy whities.
But I guess...
There, I did it for you. Now you don't have to
we can
say
scratch that off the list.
I guess, if we give people enough of a roadmap, they know where we're going, they know where we're headed,
Yeah.
where they can be headed.
I have a question from Rick Childress, who's from Eaton Electrical in Pittsburgh, PA. He's a diehard listener, comes on to the live shows. And he says, guys, what do you think about the notion that Microsoft is simply upping the ante with Longhorn to put so much innovation in the flagship product that it would make it extremely difficult for the OSS to catch up in a reasonable time frame? Discuss. Wow. And I would add, even more difficult for Microsoft to catch up. I mean, how do you top Longhorn if it's going to be as good as they say it's going to be?
Wow. Well, there's a grain of truth to the question, which is, are we working on innovation? Yes. Is the operating system going to stand still? No. Is it important that it moves forward at a very rapid pace? Is it important for the industry? Is it important for Microsoft? Yes. And so of course, we're trying to do as much innovation as possible in Longhorn. And yes, that will make it challenging for competitors.
Right.
It's a statement of optimism. Do you think that, generally speaking, we're done with computer science and with the experience?
Good question.
We think that even after Longhorn, there'll be plenty to do.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's still, until you have, I think of a program and poof, it appears, you still have a lot of work to do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
exactly.
Also with Windows, though, you guys have to kind of target the lowest common denominator in terms of hardware. You have to make sure that your operating system is going to run on such and such setup, while, of course, the hardware to run Longhorn has probably been around for a little while now, and we're not even going to see Longhorn for a few years. So it seems like a very widely adopted platform necessarily has to remain somewhat behind the hardware curve so that other people can... people with older hardware can keep up. So maybe this is just like the natural progression. There's nothing about squashing OSS here. This is something that should have been done and that Microsoft has probably wanted to do, and now they finally can because the hardware level is coming up to where it needs to be.
Also, the plumbing, without the .NET framework, Longhorn could never work, right?
Right. Exactly. I mean, Longhorn is about building on top of the innovation we've done with .NET.
Yeah.
Not to rehash the PDC messaging too much, but there have been advances in presentation, data, and communication. Starting with what's going on in the hardware and with networks, with ubiquitous bandwidth, with high-speed bandwidth. The incredibly powerful GPUs, all that stuff. Disk capacity outpacing Moore's law. I mean, this stuff is not standing still.
Yeah.
Lynn Erickson wants to know from Houston, Texas, is there anything you can tell us about Internet Explorer? I've heard nothing except for a Scoble blog about it.
We continue to innovate. We have more details coming shortly, but it's pretty much what you expect. We continue to move forward on the standards. We continue to innovate on Internet Explorer. And it was included in the PDC build of Longhorn, and we'll just keep moving forward. In fact, if you look at the upcoming release of Service Pack 2 of Windows, you'll see some of the improvements we've made, and it'll be obvious that we are not standing still on Internet Explorer.
I wanted to say, though, about that, I'm getting more and more messages from people saying that they switched to Firefox. right? The stripped down Mozilla browser. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they feel like even though you guys are still working on IE, some things are being ignored, right? Like, why don't we have tab browsing in IE? When I fire up OS 10, I open up Safari and I've got tab browsing. I can open up Mozilla, I've got tab browsing. Opera's had tab browsing for years. It even seems like it wouldn't be such a tough feature to implement.
Yeah.
And yet we still don't see it. I think that might be where people are getting at when they're talking about features in IE. It seems like IE, although it is being worked on, is almost... it's not keeping up in terms of feature sets with the other browsers out there, and it's worrisome to a lot of us.
The good news is this show's is archived and downloadable, so I will make sure I pass the feedback on directly to the IE team so they can listen to the comments.
That'd be awesome, because I get a lot of email about that, actually. Your site, I get the idea of what people are using because I look in the logs, and I get the occasional your site doesn't render properly in Firefox message that anybody who runs a pro Microsoft site gets from people. But
Avant browser apparently
it's buggy though. It's not. Okay. It's not terribly stable. I've used Avant browser. It does have tab browsing, but it's not terribly stable. In my opinion. I know people who've used it and loved it, but I'd like to see it come from Microsoft. I'd like to see Microsoft say, hey, we're paying attention. We're going to keep up with what the other platforms have got going on, and it's going to be good stuff. And you guys definitely have the resources. So
I guess, one thing that you have now is you're sort of unencumbered by, I won't say unencumbered, but less inhibited by having to focus so much on a direct competition with Netscape, which was going on a few years ago. I mean, there are other browsers out there, but in terms of market share, you guys, Internet Explorer is the clear leader. So, I'm not saying that that's, why there's no tab browsing or anything, but I'm saying that, now it seems like since most of corporate America is using Internet Explorer, you guys are feeling a little bit freer to put some technologies in there that, wouldn't necessarily fly in other browsers that, that are more tied to Windows, I suppose you could say. Is that true, you think?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how to interpret your question. I do think that, whenever you have a new technology innovation, that in the early days, there's lots of churn and lots of kind of excitement. And then at some point, that stuff tends to settle down as you mature a little bit and you start taking adoption rates sky high. You think of things like wireless and the kind of churn we had in wireless standards until we saw 802.11 kind of settle down. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, the pace of innovation slows down dramatically. And innovating once everybody has a particular standard in place becomes a little bit harder.
Right. And
so I think, don't forget, we lived in a period of time where everyone talked about internet time. And, innovation happened at a very, very rapid rate. And we were just working towards getting adoption. Now everyone's grandmother uses this stuff.
Right.
And so the pace of innovation just naturally slows down a little bit, and we become a little bit more thoughtful because innovation affects so many constituencies. Enterprises, consumers, existing apps. And so we're trying to be thoughtful about this, but really listen to the feedback we're getting and innovate in the right places.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it's probably not a fair question, I guess, because it seems like the only place where people really, that's the only place I really hear a lot of complaints is IE. So in a lot of areas, you guys really are doing, pretty exceptionally well, I would say. That's just a sore spot for some people.
And also I think the complaints probably span a spectrum, right? You got, where's tab browsing on the one end of the spectrum, on the other end you got, where's my pop-up blocker? So there's a whole range, and as Vic said, I think we're trying to address, trying to pick off things on all parts of the spectrum.
Also, I think, do you think that you're making the browser more of a browser and less of an application platform now? That you see that there's a push towards smart clients and
.NET. Yeah, well, I guess the question, the way we look at it is very different, which is what's the challenge? What's the developer challenge? And right now, the developer is the one who feels the pain. He can write, or he or she can write great applications for the PC. They can write pretty good applications for mobile devices. They can write web apps. But the paradigms and the programming model and the syntax across all these various approaches are all different. Mm-hmm. Why is it that I have to make a decision that if I want to deploy an app on the web, that I have to use a certain set of technologies and a certain architectural approach? But if I want to write an application for the PC with different kind of attributes, I have to use an entirely different paradigm.
Right.
And what we're trying to do with our platform moving forward is to bring together the best attributes of all these things, of the web, of Windows, and really see if we can simplify life for the developer. In fact, some of the innovations in Longhorn are really the prime directive, or the prime goal is to unify these things. and not have developers make these tough trade-offs.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think it's fantastic. And right now we're going to take a break over the hour, and we're going to listen to a really nice interview that Rory did with the guys at Channel 9. So stick around. This isn't going to be music, and I think you're going to like it.
All right. So today we've got a special spot on .NET Rocks. I have with me, I'm Rory, of course. I have with me on the phone right now 5 guys from Redmond who have put together a rather interesting little keyhole in the door to Microsoft that you can kind of peek through and get an idea of what it is that's going on inside of the big house, which is something that we haven't really been able to do in the past. You know, it's always been sort of like this big, tall door that you go up to and you pound on and you cry and you whine and you want to get in, but you can't. And they were listening and they could hear you pounding and crying, but they had to get the code together to create the website, to create the service that now lets you see inside. So to get things started, I want to introduce the 5 guys from Redmond. And do you guys have any particular order you like to introduce yourselves in?
We always like to introduce Lenn first because he pays the bills. He's our boss.
Great. So, Lenn.
Hey, Rory, I'm Lenn Pryor. I'm the guy, a.k.a. Scoble's boss, the guy who has the privilege of working with the other 4 guys from Redmond to put this little project together. So been in Microsoft for about 7 years, been an evangelist ever since I came here. And we're having a lot of fun right now. It's been quite a blast. Thanks for having us.
Great. All right. And guy from Redmond number 2.
I'll go for that. I'm Jeff Sandquist, and a.k.a. Scoble called me, I'm known as Scoble's mentor sometimes, which is kind of an interesting thing to do. We just happy to be here. We launched a website about 14 days ago, and I guess we should get the URL in now too. It's channel 9, channel the number 9. Period MSDN period com, channel9.msdn.com.
All right, and guy from Redmond number 3. Was there going to be a fight?
I guess I'll go. I'm Bryn. I'm one of the developers on the project. That and me and Charles pretty much just argue all the time. So
no, we don't.
That's my role on the team. Just argue with Charles.
Great. I'd like that job, actually. So then, Redmond guy number 5.
Actually, I'm Redmond guy number 4.
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
I'm Charles. I'm a developer on Channel 9. And I've been at Microsoft for about 4 or 5 years, and this is a fantastic project to be working on.
Mm-hmm. We're missing Redmond guy number 5, probably one of the more famous, one of our number 5 guy, and that's Scoble.
Right.
We got in a little fight as a team last night, and he's off speaking at a meeting right now, so he couldn't make it, unfortunately.
But you guys hear enough from him all the time if you read him, so I'm sure that's more than enough Scoble for you, right?
Yeah, I've got a Scoble pipe going into my computer just for Scoble.
Good.
So, all right. So, does anybody want to talk about what Channel 9 is? Like, you've got the next few minutes to kind of get the word out and let people know what's going on with the website. Does anybody want to start with a sort of general overview of what's happening on the site, what people can do, what they're going to get from it?
Absolutely. I think all of us can start this or can add to it, but let me just go ahead and start by saying, give you a little idea into the inside of what this is about. The Channel 9 story all started around PDC when we were all working on the PDC project together as a group and doing lots of different things. And we realized there was an awful lot of good stuff that happens when you can get developers from Microsoft together with developers from outside of Microsoft, and a lot of productive conversations happen. And a lot of people realize they have a lot of stuff in common together. And we just started thinking, how could we actually make this conversation stay alive? How could it scale? How could everyone get a chance, even if you don't come to the PDC, to get to meet developers that work on the products and the platforms that you use and interact with them on a regular basis? Like you said, Rory, get a little glimpse inside of Redmond. And so we started thinking about this and put together a plan. And between the 5 of us, we started sketching out, how could we use some of the tools and technologies that are out there today, like some of the things from social software. We looked at lots of different things, from blogs to bulletin boards, message boards, wikis, all sorts of things. And we ended up settling on a combination of just about all of those, plus adding video in. Simply because video is a medium that you can communicate a lot about the individuals that you don't get out of text or even radio sometimes. So we decided to use video as a way to bring those faces out and give people a chance to see who we are as people.
Okay, so in a way, you've managed to take the hallway conversations from the PDC and put them online.
Yeah, and in some ways, that's exactly what happened. You'll notice from the types of interviews we're doing here is we're not journalists.
Right.
We're developers and evangelists, and we're folks who are out there just sort of talking with our peers that we work with every day and putting some of that stuff out there. I mean, Jeff can talk a little bit about the process of how we shoot these things and put them together. It's pretty. You're looking at 5 guys who aren't in the media trying to do things like shoot video and create good interviews. So it's a learning process too.
When we looked at the overall site with Jeff, it's like we really thought about what if we were building an enthusiast site? If we were building a site about that talked about something else that we're passionate, whether it's motorcycles or some aspect of commuting. What would the things we'd have? We'd have a forum and so forth. Well, we had the luxury that that we're able to bring the people that are behind Microsoft. So literally, how a video gets decided to somebody interviewed. A lot of it can be somewhat a little bit more structured defined. We have lists of names of people that we want to target. But then some days I'm just watching a distribution list, mailing list inside the company, and somebody just is very interesting on a list, and it's like literally I'll send them a note and say, hey, we're these guys behind this site. Have you seen it? Maybe they have, or maybe they haven't. And we start getting them interested in what we're doing. We said, look, we just spent some time with you. And we go over and we just let them talk for an hour. And then we go back and we edit the content. And we really look at the video almost like you would a weblog post. We really try to keep them down to one thought, 2 to 3 minutes long. So they're not so long that you go away from it before you're done watching it. We kind of want you to stay at the site a little bit while you're doing it so that you'll come back and put some comments and discussion around it.
Right.
And a very quick turnaround. We could probably, if we had a video that we shot right now, we probably could get one up, within a few hours if we really, really tried hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I just move quickly and get lots of different content. It's things about that are the here and now of today. We'll have stuff around, Windows XP Service Pack 2, things about Whidbey, things about Visual Studio today, and stuff about Longhorn as well, and even also Yukon. And it's just about people getting together and having a conversation with Microsoft and seeing a little bit inside how the sausage is made.
Right. Well, one of the things I think is great about it along those lines, the sausage is made, is that we're also getting to see inside of the minds of the people who are making the sausage. It's not just tech. It seems it's not just like Longhorn, and it's not a marketing tool. I mean, take Willie, for example. He's been great. I go on there and I listen to Willie. He talks about things that have some relevance to the tech world, but then he goes on in his own way, and he turns it into part of the humanities, really.
Yeah. So often I'll meet somebody, and when they get to meet me, they'll ask me, the first couple stock questions about when you meet somebody at Microsoft. Have you met Bill?
Are you rich?
Are you rich? And then we start talking about software, and they'll say, really, you like making software too? I was like, yeah, I work for Microsoft. Wow, you mean you really, and it's surprising because I think that when they start to realize that, we use Visual Studio too, and we use SourceSafe, and we use, SQL Server, and we run into, the same types of things in building this site or other applications that we've been a part of, they're like, you all of a sudden start getting a connection. And that's a real powerful thing, and it's very exciting. I think we as a team right now, we're all a little bit tired on sleep right now because when the site went live, it's hard to turn the thing off. I 1 o'clock in the morning, I'll wake up or whatever, and walk downstairs to get a glass of milk, and I walk by and I've got my laptop up, and I go, oh, I'm just going to go over and check and see who's online. And then all of a sudden, wow, there's all these different people from other countries and stuff online, different time zones, and it's just really exciting to get out there and get with people.
It is great to see who's online when you're on there. You see friends of yours sitting in that sidebar, and you know that they're there looking at the site the same time you are, and it makes it feel a lot like a community because you don't do that with a blog. You don't know the other people that are looking at it.
Totally, Rory. That was a big piece of how we designed this thing. Was we looked at the things that are good about blogs, about forums, about wikis, lots of different things, and it's hard to pick one of those because one of the things that have always bothered me about the web is you go to a website, even a super, super, super popular website, and you know that there are probably thousands, if not even up to hundreds of thousands of people simultaneously doing what you're doing. But you have no sense of the presence. It's a very one-way interaction. Even a blog, you might be blogging about your personal thoughts. You might even have comments. But even, in most blogs, the comments are sort of buried under a link. They're not in your face. And that's one of the reasons we decided not only to use avatars and to put people's faces to it or expressions of their personality. A lot of people, you'll notice, don't use their personal photograph. And they put a cartoon or something that represents their personality, and you get to see the variety of the types of people who's there sharing the experience with you. And we thought that was a kind of a unique thing there.
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, in a way, the old way was sort of like going to a movie theater where everybody has their own private booth and there's one seat in each booth and they're all watching the same movie, but you wouldn't know it because everything's soundproofed. And here, you bring back the community aspect of things that developers often lose. So that is a great deal. So we're going to talk about the technical stuff. There's probably one question that's on a lot of people's minds, and in particular the throngs of Slashdotters who wound up on the site, and that is, are there any plans to release the source for Channel 9? Because it's a very interesting piece of software. I've never seen anything with so many RSS feeds. It's like you can get an RSS feed for a link or an image, you know? I'm exaggerating, but it is very RSS'd.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a ton of RSS stuff on there. What I think it'd be good to let Bryn and Charles talk a little bit about the technology behind it and how we put it together, because that's a big piece of understanding the future plans for how we do it. Because this project was built off of shared source software.
Right.
If you look at Channel 9, you'll look down at the bottom bottom header or footer. You'll notice that we tell you exactly what it is. And Bryn or Charles, why don't you talk a little bit about how you put this together and then how we might proceed with giving check-ins back to the community and stuff.
Go for it, Bryn. I'll argue with you.
A huge amount of our source code, I mean, probably 90-95% of it comes from those projects, from the ASP.NET forums and the FlexWiki projects.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that we had to do with them, though, is we sort of forked the code away from the version that's shared source, and I kind of, to some extent, I regret that. But what we're trying to do now to get the source out there is sort of figure out which of the things that we added are going to be useful in those projects outside of Channel 9, and hopefully try and see if we can get those features back into the forum source, sort of integrate backwards. The other things that we've done that maybe wouldn't necessarily fit into the source projects, but might be useful anyway, just to find out how we did it. I'm sort of trying to iteratively put little pieces of source out on the wiki, and I don't know, later on we might do something a little different with that, something better.
Well, that's really cool. So, do you want to tell me a little bit about how you are able to take all this information and so apparently easy convert it to RSS streams? I mean, do you have like some sort of a view controller mumbo jumbo thing going on inside? You have these generic data items that you're exposing and then running through some processor that's spitting out RSS, or what's going on? Can you talk about that?
Well, it's not quite that. It's not a model view controller type application. It's actually just there's a couple classes that we have, or that actually ASP.NET Forums has. It's got a RSS channel class and an RSS item class.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure about the naming of that class. And really all we do is we have an RSS.ASPX page, and it figures out based on the context what RSS feed it should be displaying. And we pass in the context from the XML link, so it's a sort of a two-way street there. The XML icon passes in all the current context over to the RSS page. The RSS page takes that context, turns it into a list of items, and makes RSS channel and a bunch of RSS items, and then that gets passed over to a standard routine that turns that into XML.
All right. Well, that's pretty cool. So that's like a peek inside the peek inside of Microsoft. I guess we're going to have to wrap it up here. We've gone a little bit over the 10 minutes, which is perfectly all right because this is great stuff. And I think people should definitely know about Channel 9. So much so, in fact.
Please come to the site. It's channel9.msdn.com. And, we've got a lot of ways for people to participate, whether it's comments, whether it's, participating in a poll, doing something in the wiki, or just even visiting the site. And we've got a lot to learn about how to make the site better, and would be thrilled if you'd come on by.
Yeah, and tell us what you need. That's another important thing. This is a living, breathing community that's hopefully going to be improved by the community. So, get on out there and tell us what you need and how to make this better, or how to make Microsoft a better Microsoft.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for coming on the show and talking to me. I know you're all busy and probably not sleeping because is Channel 9 the day job for everybody here?
You know what? The Channel 9 has been our day job for a little while, but it's, as an evangelism group, we got plenty of things to do. So,
right. So you're pretty busy. So
we're
thanks a
pretty
lot for the
busy
time.
right now, but we're having a great time, and it's been an absolute blast.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess with that, we'll let you guys go.
Thanks a bunch, Rory.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
That was pretty cool. And we're back. We're going to do a spot for Data Dynamics, and after that, we're going to get some more people from Microsoft on the phone, and we're going to have a good old time. So stick around, man. Hey, Carl Franklin here, giving a shout-out to my friends at Data Dynamics. We've talked a lot about Active Reports on this show, and this is no exception. So I'm talking about ActiveReports.net. This is a port of their popular Active Reports program. If you're currently thinking of doing reporting in .NET for Windows Forms or web applications, check out Active Reports for .NET. Many of my friends in the business use and swear by ActiveReports.net. I use it as well. Let me just tell you, to say that the reporting is simple does it an injustice, because it makes you think that it can only do simple things. It can do very powerful things, but you don't have to go through hoops just to set up a simple report. When you create a report, the report exists with your application, okay? It doesn't exist on a server somewhere. All right, we're not talking about enterprise reporting. We're talking about, I have some data, I want to print it out, or I want to show it to the user. PDF format is supported, HTML format is supported. All the great features you'd expect from a reporting engine, drop dead simple, and the best part, it's not going to break the bank. They have a great licensing scheme that's easy to deal with. So check it out at www.datadynamics.com. Now let's get back to our show. And we're back. And so we're going to have Lenn Pryor and the gang from Channel 9 on here on the show coming up in a very short while. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to do a little section we like to call every week the Linux Vulnerability of the Week. And here we go.
Hello, Mr. Bull. Let's you and me fight.
This week, the Linux vulnerability is an article that came out in InternetNews.com. April 16th, 2004, multiple Linux flaws reported. And this is a story that basically says that researchers are warning of a buffer overflow security flaw in the Linux kernel that can be exploited to lead to privilege escalation attacks. Now, I love how they say in the Linux world it could lead to privilege escalation attacks, but when Windows flaws come out, they say which could allow a remote hacker to take control of your computer, So they spin it a little differently.
Well, Carl, the usual difference is privilege escalation attacks mean that somebody who already has an account on a Unix or Linux machine that isn't the root user can become a root user. So
Right.
They already have to have access to the machine.
Right, that's why we use the word hacker.
Yes.
Yes. So according to an advisory issued by iDefense, the vulnerabilities affect Linux kernel 2.6, Linux kernel 2.5, and 2.4. Quote, successful exploitation may allow arbitrary code execution with root or kernel level privileges. Kernel level privileges. Boy, that's hard to say. And it goes on and on and on. Anyway, we do this Linux vulnerability of the week not to tell people that we think that Microsoft Windows doesn't have bugs and Linux does. Quite to the contrary, we are here to give equal time to the flaws that occur in Linux, because there are those out there that say Linux has no flaws. And that, my friends, is the Linux vulnerability of the week.
Hello, Mr. Bull. Let's you and me fight.
So, Rory, that was quite an interview you did with the guys from the Channel 9. As it turns out, they're on the phone right now. Hey, Len. Hey, guys.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Hey there.
Hi.
This is Jeff.
Okay, so this is Jeff. And
Jeff,
who else?
Len, and let me see who else is on. I think Brennan and Charles are jumping on. They're just in the process of dialing in.
I'm here.
All right, Brent's there, and Charles has a sore throat, so I'm not sure if yes, let's see. He can
we'll take it
talk.
easy on Charles.
Okay, it says he still can't talk because he's got a sore throat. And he said he's at home right now, and he's got coming down with something, so I don't think we're going to get him on.
That's okay.
Well, I was told I got Lyme disease yesterday, so, I mean, everybody's got something going on.
You were told you have Lyme disease?
Well, that I might have Lyme disease, so, yeah.
Do you guys have, are you guys getting a lot of traffic at Channel 9?
Yeah, it's been really fantastic, the amount of the response we've had, considering we never really were sure what to expect. We put this out without doing a lot of marketing or promotion or anything. And, there's almost 4,000 registered users on the site, and there's a constant churn of people 24 hours a day, so we're pretty happy with it.
So there's something I wanted to know when we talked last night is, it is a Microsoft community site, and the idea is to open up the doors a bit. I know that when I was reading Slashdot comments, some people were complaining that they weren't able to get to the video because they were coming in from a Nix platform. Do you have any plans to support any other video formats so that people from other platforms can watch the movies, or would that be? I mean, I understand it's already a lot of work for you guys to edit and render and get these things out, but are there any plans at all in the future for doing anything for that crowd?
We're thinking about how to handle this. I mean, obviously our expertise is in working with Windows Media.
Of course.
We understand, but there's a couple of things we're thinking of doing. One is making the videos available for offline download.
Oh, okay.
So that you can download them and watch them with another player. And, there's Mac support for Windows Media, and there's even Linux support, believe it or not, for Windows Media. It just doesn't do streaming. There's a product called
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
There's a couple of different options for viewing Windows Media across platforms. And, whether we look at other formats in terms of encoding or streaming formats, we're still trying to figure it out. I mean, like I said yesterday, we're learning how to do video editing and shooting and everything sort of on the fly as a group of folks who really don't know much about it. So we've kind of gone for the way that seemed most easy to get up and running. But we hear what the community's saying, and we're definitely listening to feedback.
It's a good point that Rory makes. That I think if you support the formats that most Linux users are using, that maybe they could download something that works, but if you target what they already have on their desktop, then you get the message to the people who need to hear it the most, I think, which is what the point is.
There's definitely something to be said for that.
Yeah.
So what do you guys do during the day? Like, let's say that you're done, well, you're never really done doing Channel 9 stuff, but what do you actually do? Because you're not like, your job title isn't Channel 9er or anything like that, or one of the 5 guys from Redmond, but what do you do?
I think maybe we should change our job titles. What do you think, Jeff?
I think that'd be great.
One of the 5 guys from Redmond.
I think one of the things that makes our job interesting is that we still have other things that we do. Channel 9 is a big part of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak for myself. I'm a program manager at Microsoft.
Okay.
Is the role that I've played a lot, and a lot of that's like being making sure that we've got some things defined and spec'd out. Working with other groups, helping get those relationships like that happening. Sometimes it's being spiritual leader, sometimes it's being like Mother Teresa, or just even who's the guy that's going to bring in the food when we're working late. So we all have different roles that we play. There's other things we do as an evangelist. And the beauty of it is that because we have other responsibility, it helps us have perspective when we're working with the site.
Right.
And it helps us keep those relationships going with other teams. But I would say, a large part of what we're doing right now is Channel 9, making sure that the site's running smoothly, listening to the features and things that customers want, and working quickly to implement them and keep the content real and interesting.
I don't know if you said this before, if you've answered this, because I really I listened to the interview with one ear. I was in Florida when Rory was doing that. So if you've already answered it, we'll just cut it out. But how many of you guys actually work on Longhorn?
Work on it every day?
Yeah.
Like using it as our machine?
No. Work on the product in terms of development.
We don't work on the Longhorn product in terms of development.
Okay.
What might be interesting to talk about is sort of the role of evangelism at Microsoft. And
sure.
Carl, you and I have met each other around Longhorn back at PDC and different things we've done with the MVPs and stuff. And I've worked on running Longhorn Evangelism for the past basically 2 years of my
career almost, or a year and a half of my career was spent, just working on trying to pull together the messages and everything that we do for Longhorn. So, you talked to Vic and to Steve earlier and heard a lot about what we've been doing and how we approach this. The role of evangelism isn't to develop the product, like literally the code on the product. The role of evangelism is to help make it possible for developers to be successful on the product.
Yeah.
And so that entails a lot of different things.
It's a totally different skill from development.
It is. It's a different skill from development. Now, you have to be technical enough to understand the feedback you're being given or to do something about what you're learning from developers, and you have to understand the product cycle and know the developers who are working on Longhorn.
Yeah.
But it's a different skill set. What we do is we bridge the gap between the product team and the developer community. And the first thing we have to do when we introduce a new product is understand why developers are going to care. So we spend a lot of time up front sitting day to day with the product teams, looking at their specs, trying to understand what they're trying to create, looking at their API, and then trying to translate that into something that's understandable by the broad community.
Well, Len, I'll give you a great example of that. At the PDC Summit, the MVP Summit before the PDC, you said the absolutely most kick-ass description of why you need Longhorn, and it was talking about WinFS. And you said this, and I tell everybody this. I've said it on the show before, and I give you credit for it. It's, how long does it take you to find a file on your hard drive? If you do a right-click in the Explorer and search or find files, and I let them answer. Yeah, forget it. You go to lunch or you let it work. It's going to take time, a lot of time. Now, how long would it take you to Google it? Couple of seconds, right. And the result of that little exercise is it's faster for you to find a file in the f***ing world than it is on your own desktop in front of you.
Right.
Right? And that just hit home so hard that because I think the reason is because you touched the pain,
That's true, but that's what evangelism is about. It's about understanding really the value of the products that we're building to our customers and being able to give someone a simple anecdote like that. Being able to tell somebody, give them a crisp example. There's a couple of ways you could describe WinFS. Sure, you could go into deep technobabble and start talking about it's a database-like engine that has metadata and provides structured information about the file system, blah, blah, blah. You could do all that. But to most people, that just kind of goes over their head when you throw a new concept out.
I totally agree.
There's nothing more powerful than a good example or a good demo.
And
that's part of what evangelism does.
So speaking of getting out to customers, you guys are evangelists. How do you get your leads? How do you decide who you're going to talk to next or where they are? How does this stuff come in? How do you decide what's important? How do you prioritize what groups or communities or people or whatever you need to talk to? How does this happen?
Sure. Well, it's a pretty complex process. I mean, obviously, there's no easy formula for determining what really drives adoption in the community. But ultimately, what we want to see is developers to be successful in our platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And we also want to make sure that success translates into a wave of support across the board. When you're in the platform business, your platform lives and dies by the support from the developer community.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, you know what I'm saying. So what you have to do is kind of look at the landscape of the product that you're bringing out and identify where are the opportunities to make the biggest roadmaps forward, or in some ways, who are going to be your leaders that everyone is going to follow?
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some companies that will exploit a new technology or adopt it in a way that's just absolutely blows everyone away. And finding those examples, aka known as the killer app, is a very difficult thing.
Well, yeah.
So you got to look at what's the value you have in a new technology, and who are the companies that really do the best job of exemplifying that. But that doesn't mean we only talk to, the 5 or 6 people that we think do that. If you did, you'd never, you'd miss so many opportunities from small companies, from, even individuals who are doing cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you can talk about this. This might be sort of off limits, but do you have some kind of super duper tracking software or something that you use to keep track of what people are doing and which companies you want to talk to next and things like that? I mean, essentially, like
rate them and
almost like a CRMS, but for evangelists.
We don't actually.
So it's all little sticky yellow notepads.
Yellow notepads.
Guys, would you like one?
We actually do use. We're a big enterprise company,
sure,
and we do use Siebel, and I think that's no secret.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Siebel implementation at Microsoft, and we use a CRM application.
Sure.
And we use that to track customers, and that goes across the sales cycle. So we don't really have sticky notes or whatever putting around. There is actually a rhythm to what we do. And,
right.
But what's weird is that these people aren't customers. They're like potential people that you could maybe someday in the future get to be customers.
Well, they could be customers. They could be, potential customers. I think it goes across all gamut.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's Jeff is right. There are definitely lots of systems for understanding who your customers are. The question is when you said, is there a magic piece of software that's watching the world out there, and tells us who's interesting? No, from that perspective, it's all a lot of hard work, and we're all software users too.
Sure.
We use computers more
than Sapien 1.0.
Right. Willie. Yeah.
Exactly. We're all Homo sapien 1.0.
That was beautiful.
And so from that perspective, we have to rely on our own, instincts as an industry and keep our eyes out on what's happening. And, every developer who builds an app for Windows is important. Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard when you have limited resources to prioritize, who do you spend your time with? It's a very difficult thing.
Let me talk about that, limited resources, because I know that you guys in the evangelism team have a lot smaller budgets than, like, say, the marketing team does. How, why is that? I mean, evangelism is really important for developers if it's really the center of the universe. Talk about that for a minute. Why is it perceived as a lower budget thing, or why do you have lower budgets?
Well, I think the difference is marketing groups are communicating through mass media, so their budgets are always going to be high because they're buying, television spots and magazine ads and things.
True.
Evangelism is very much a sort of person-to-person type of a communication form. It's not something that you go out and you don't evangelize through a print ad in Wired. But it's very different. So the one
bandwidth costs money, though, and
bandwidth costs money.
Events cost money, and
yeah, absolutely. When I say we have limited resources, people would probably be blown away about the numbers of what we do have available to us. But think about this: Microsoft takes evangelism extremely seriously. We have over 400 evangelists inside of the company that work around the world, and I think that's something most people don't realize. There are small teams who are focused on, maybe leading the charge. For instance, Whidbey, Yukon, Longhorn. All these things have to start out with small groups of people who are able to get close to the product team, build the relationships, understand the landscape, and then work with the rest of the company to build this up.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. It's not like a problem that can scale when you throw money at it.
Right.
You have to it's all about people.
It's all about people, and that's the difference. Is evangelism depends on, our success as a company and getting developers excited about our technology really starts at the person-to-person level. Like Carl said, when I was in that meeting that time and I gave that analogy and it touched Carl, that's something that I can't do especially well, by taking out a print advertisement or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Evangelism is almost a word-of-mouth, grassroots type effort. And if you look at what we're doing with Channel 9, that's actually a good example of how you can touch people directly on scale. That's one of the things we're trying to figure out is, can you give people that same feeling of meeting someone at the PDC without having everyone fly to the PDC? Can you use some of these new mediums new mediums to be able to do this?
It's spectacular, and I love watching the videos from the very first one, Homo sapien 1.0.
Yeah,
that's just great.
So one thing about the videos, about Channel 9, about all this information, is that this is a very, 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 very new way for Microsoft to be communicating with people, right? I mean, for a lot of other people in the community, maybe in the open source community or just general users of the platform and software, it doesn't necessarily seem like such a big deal. But for you guys, it really is. Have there been any uphill struggles recently? Are you guys having to fight to keep Channel 9, or is it being accepted pretty readily inside of the company? Because it's a big change, and I don't know if a lot of people inside of Microsoft are probably ready for that.
I'll actually challenge you that maybe it is not that big of a change.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to look back at what has been happening and at Microsoft and just even around the world. You go look at blogs.msdn.com and look down the lower left for a number of webloggers that are just on that one site of Microsoft webloggers. There's over like 400 webloggers there. There's a lot of people that are communicating in a different way and fashion these days. And, Channel 9 is just a natural evolution of a lot of things that really started around the PDC. Well, I remember after the PDC, going through weblogs and saying, wow, I got to connect with Microsoft on a personal level. Mm-hmm. And I really think that started before the PDC through a lot of people weblogging.
Through blogs, yeah.
And I think that Channel 9 is a natural evolution of that. Not everybody has the time to weblog, and that's why we took video as a way. If you look at our video posts on Channel 9, they're really like a weblog entry. Bill Hill, when he did Homo sapiens 1.0, or when he did one space after a period rather than two, if he had typed that out, it probably would have been a very viral, very popular weblog post. The challenge of getting somebody to take the time when they have other different things going on in their schedule to write a regular weblog, and making that personal commitment, geez, I'm going to set up a weblog, I'm going to go and start writing on a daily basis, is not necessarily always approachable. With Channel 9, we're trying to make that a kind of more approachable from everybody, because they don't, we can work with them, we can do some videotaping, we can get them online very quickly. There's no setup things for them. It's sort of like, here we go, we'll make this as easy for you as possible and try and get them up regularly. So I challenge that, we're doing some pretty interesting things with wikis and things like that. Really, the whole party started long before PDC, and I think this is just the next step. The question will be, what is the world going to look like in 5 years? And I think that's where it gets really exciting.
And just to add to Jeff's point, it's even, Jeff and I met probably almost 7 years ago working on MSDN, doing efforts around news groups in the community. And the funny thing is, people forget Microsoft has been out there communicating with customers online since the early 1980s with the CompuServe forums.
CompuServe.
The CompuServe forums evolved and eventually went away as CompuServe lost popularity, and we moved to NNTP. We've had, literally thousands of NNTP users and posts and things going on out there for years. That evolved into, even web-based news readers like you'll find on MSDN today. It's just, this is almost a natural evolution of just communicating with your customers.
As is .NET Rocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess for me, where the difference lies is that with the forums and the news groups and the face-to-face conversations and the conventions and things like that, is that it's you guys coming to us. But with Channel 9, it's like Microsoft setting up its shingle on the internet, its community shingle on the internet, and saying, now you guys come to us. You guys come to Microsoft instead of Microsoft coming to you guys. It's like it's happening on your territory. It seems a little bit more official. I guess for me, that's why it seems like a bigger deal. Because the blogs.msdn.com stuff, that's also relatively new.
Sure,
but at the same time,
you go away.
Yeah, but at the same time, I still detect a certain detachment. Like when I'm reading Dare's blog, for example, I feel like I'm connecting with Dare. I don't feel like I've got a pipe straight through to Microsoft. But with Channel 9, it's a keyhole right in the door going right into Microsoft.
Are you saying that's a good thing? I'm sorry, are you saying, is it a good thing that that this is more official, that we're having you come to us rather than us going to them?
Yes, absolutely. That is what I'm saying. I think it's a very good thing. And I think that's what's a little bit unusual about it, because a lot of people will probably be thinking, well, how'd the lawyers let this slip past? How'd the suits let this fly? How'd the people upstairs who have to worry about, image or who have to worry about possible lawsuits, how did they let this happen? And it gives Microsoft a different face, in my opinion, for you guys to make it official like this and make it available.
There certainly are challenges, and this, like we said from the beginning, this is an experiment.
Right.
We had an idea, and we executed on it, and we had good support from our management, and we were able to do this experiment. And like you said, there's a lot of things that you have to be sensitive to in open communication.
Right.
You have to worry about, what you say sometimes in this world. Simply because it can either be taken out of context or used against you. Sure, lawyers are concerned about things like that. Mm-hmm. There are simple rules. We wrote this thing called the Channel 9 Doctrine that's up there on the site. And if you read the rules, they're pretty straightforward. It's just be smart, talk about what you're here to talk about, and that's, technology. We're not here to create controversy or to, publish our thoughts on the world or anything.
We have Rory to do that.
We have Rory to do that, exactly. Through the cartoons and all that wonderful stuff that you do.
And ass leakage.
And through ass leakage.
So another thing here then, I guess to bring it back to the official side, is Microsoft is very results oriented, right? There's a certain expectation of return on investment. Are you guys going to have to demonstrate something somehow? Because obviously you're not going to be able to say, well, Channel 9 has directly led to increased revenue. How are you guys going to handle that as the months come? Are you going to have to handle that, or is this generally seen as a good thing and it's worth the investment?
I think it's generally seen as a good thing that's worth the investment. I mean, obviously we don't want to just waste shareholder money on random ridiculous experiments.
Of course.
But what this is about is sometimes this is something we talk about and think about a lot, which is how do you measure relationships?
Mm-hmm.
You can be a very, very results-oriented person in life. You can be extremely metrics-oriented. You can judge everything you do by dollars and cents and standards of efficiency, and that has its place. At the same time, there's this thing in the world called relationships, which is incredibly hard to measure in statistical terms.
Sure.
And sometimes when you try to measure it, it's even harder because then it's almost like if I called up all of my friends and said, I'd like you to fill out a survey on how good of a friend I am.
Right.
What would your friends think of you if you did that? Relationships are very hard, are soft and intangible things. And this is something that business in general, not just Microsoft, is going to struggle with over the next couple of years.
But you guys have demonstrated that it clearly works. I mean, right? I mean, there's clear numbers out there that says, look, evangelism works. The things that we've done in Dev Days and the PDC, I mean, that gets people understanding our products, developers especially, which is critical to the success of Windows, not just to the success of, VisualStudio.net, let's say.
Sure. I mean, if that's your assertion, I think I appreciate that. Obviously, we invested in it as a company.
Isn't that why you do it? Because it works, or is it? You're not just throwing darts, right?
Absolutely, it does work. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've wondered about, because evangelism or relationships, it's not like something you can package and sell like Office, And when I look at Microsoft, it's just something that I think about, like, how does this work inside? How do people see it? It was almost like a selfish question, just because I've been so curious about that, and I've been wanting to ask somebody inside for a while now, and I guess I could have emailed, but I'm sure there are other people who want to know too. So
it's kind of related to a question we have from a listener, Greg Bloomers, who says, how do evangelists get reviewed and rated, and how do you get such a cool job?
Yeah.
Hopefully they're rated very well. Lenn's my boss.
Right.
How do evangelists get reviewed and rated? It's interesting. What makes a good evangelist? A good evangelist is somebody who is a fantastic communicator, someone who's able to clearly get the message across and motivate people based on that. If you think of the roots of the word evangelism and where it comes from religion, it's all just a matter of communicating one's values and beliefs, and getting people excited and passionate about them. Whether that applies to a version of a religion or even in business to a platform that you're trying to sell in the marketplace. So people who are good evangelists are great communicators. People who are good evangelists follow through. They take care of their customer.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ed.
Well, we have a caller on the phone, Joe Acker, who's got a story to tell about some experience he had with Microsoft Evangelism. Joe, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Thanks for calling .NET Rocks. Can we send you a T-shirt?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
All right.
T-shirts are always good.
We like to clothe our listeners. So.
You have a question?
Well, no, I had a comment. Back in 1985, I'd been managing a computer store at the Yale Co-op in New Haven, Connecticut, for a couple of years, and somebody from Microsoft called us and came out and wanted to show us Word and brought out copies of it and gave it to us, and we thought that was great because even as a store, we needed to have that kind of an introduction to a product to get going, and they held our hands and kept us going, and we thought cool. That was just terrific.
Wow, that's great.
It's a great story, Greg.
So did it sort of set you on the path of using Microsoft products in general? Was that like a critical thing for the future, or was it just good in that one setting? Or
well, it wasn't. It didn't make me a convert at the time because basically I had a software program a word processing program I was selling to Yale students that was tailor made for doing academic work.
Oh,
but I was very impressed with what they did and all along I can see the community building that Microsoft's been doing. Our company is also is a Microsoft partner, SMP Technologies, and we're also Macromedia partners.
Yeah.
We wish we'd get the attention from Macromedia, even though I'm the leader of the local Macromedia, user group for Connecticut. I'm the only one left now.
Wow.
And we just don't get any support from them. We just wonder why, and especially compared to Microsoft.
How long have you been at Yale?
Well, I was at Yale some time back, back in the 80s, but now I'm over at SMP Technology.
So were you there when our president was going to school there?
Gee, I don't know. I think that was, maybe it was around his time, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool, though, because a lot of that kind of answers the tangible returns question. I mean, obviously, it's not something you're necessarily going to write down or mark down, but it sounds like from somebody who's actually been out there and who's experienced this firsthand, it does work,
for me, I'd say it absolutely does.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I don't think that there's any other development platform that gets the kind of attention that Microsoft developers do. I mean, I had a comment from a guy down at Dev Connections who, and Microsoft was highly involved in that conference too. They did a whole day on with Microsoft speakers. They had, previews and talks with the guys from Microsoft, and so there was obviously a Microsoft presence, and we were talking with this one guy who basically said, anybody who's going to develop on any other platform is insane because they're not getting this kind of support. They're not even getting the kind of websites that you can go to, just like offline stuff. Never mind.
No kidding. Yeah.
Never mind getting together at places like this and being handed, the kind of tools that Microsoft is giving them to check out. It's just, you'd be insane. I mean, in terms of community involvement.
Cool. Well, thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Well, if there's any one thing I think that Microsoft could add to what they're doing, it would be to become a little bit more interactive on their site. Although they are, I mean, everybody knows if you've gone up and you've checked out docs, there's always a question there: did this help? And their docs are rated, and I suppose that Microsoft is either leaving them on there for people or taking them off, depending upon the kind of response they get.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge of evangelism is getting developers to read the docs.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for having me on the show.
All right, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Are you guys still there?
Absolutely.
Cool.
So there's a happy customer. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great to hear. It's that shows the power of this. This isn't anything new or a secret formula. I mean, small business owners do this fantastically. It's just reaching out to your customer and taking good care of them, helping them see the value of the service or the product you sell, and doing it in a way that's productive and supportive.
And coming up with great metaphors like the WinFS thing you did, Len. That was just brilliant. So what's in store for Tech Ed? I'm going to be there. I'm going to be speaking. Rory and I are doing two shows. Count them, 2. Well, 2 different. Okay. Rory and I are going to be doing 2 different events, 2 different events that are going to culminate in the .NET Rocks show after the fact. And we're also, Microsoft is giving away a ticket to Tech Ed within the next 10 minutes here. We're going to be giving it away.
Oh, cool.
So what do you guys, obviously we've talked to some evangelism people before, Eileen Crane being one of them. And she sort of laid out to me that the PDC is all about the future, and the Tech Ed is all about the present. And so, what's coming up at Tech Ed in May that you can talk about?
Sure, Jeff. You want to share some of your thoughts on this too?
Len, you go first, and then I'll follow along.
So basically, Eileen is right about that in terms of the PDC is very much a forward-looking conference. We sort of think of it as an 18 to 24 months type conference where you're there to help guide the roadmap. Tech Ed is very much about the things, actionable skills training, things that you can use within the coming, either currently right now or within the coming 6 to 12 months. And there's a lot of good stuff that's there to help people do their jobs and get stuff done. I think this year at Tech Ed, you're going to see a lot of good stuff coming out around the .NET framework, especially around Visual Studio Whidbey, or Visual Studio.NET 2005, as I think it's now called.
Right.
Where they're going to spend a lot of time talking about some of the good improvements coming for developers around the next version of VS. There'll be lots of talk about SQL Server Yukon and even a lot of the current shipping technologies. Tech Ed is a cool conference because it covers more than just the hardcore developer issues. Tech Ed is also a conference where a lot of IT pro issues are covered. So if you're an Exchange server administrator or SQL, DB admin, this is a place where there's lots of different topics covered across a broad variety of technologies.
Yeah. And as Keith was saying, he's doing a pre-conference on architecture there, right? And he's getting together with this core group of his. And he actually said that he would make it happen so that the winner of this ticket would donate. He would donate, a ticket to that pre-conference.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
pre-conference is a great way to get some very quick sort of ramp up on skills that you may not have or technologies you may not be as familiar with to make the most of the conference.
I think a lot of people know, anybody who's been to maybe one conference or more than one conference. It's a little plug for going to conferences. The connections you make to people in your industry, people at Microsoft, and just the friends you make are going to last a lifetime. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I take away from conferences.
Yeah,
so I'm able to connect one-on-one with people,
yep.
And you just get a whole new perspective of people when you meet them one-on-one.
And speaking
I think that's one of the biggest values that I get out of the conference: the hallway connections, the ideas, and the things. And it's just a very powerful thing.
I want to say for anybody, speaking of the meeting one-on-one thing, we have a lot of big fans of the Bob Resselman show, the guy who wrote Coding Slave, and we're organizing a sort of
get-together,
unofficial get-together on Sunday night. So if you're interested in meeting Bob, and I really am, like really freaky interested. I probably shouldn't say freaky
interested.
Yeah. Email me, rory@neopolian.com. We're going to try to get something together because that guy has some interesting stuff going on up in his head, and it'd be fun to talk. So
awesome.
Maybe
I'll even try to stop in there.
Yeah.
Maybe if you can, maybe I could talk. Maybe we could even try to get a room somewhere.
Yeah.
We'll try to make that happen.
Be cool.
So now it's time, folks. If you were listening at the beginning of the show and you heard the namespace of the week, we want you to go now to www.franklins.net/call.netrocks and tell us what it is. And we're going to pick a lucky winner at random to give away the ticket to Tech Ed. And, boy, I'm just so excited, and here they come, Rory. They're just pouring in. They're just, somebody who won a server says, can I trade in a server for this?
Geez.
No. Chances are if you've already won something, you're not going to win again. So we'll just say that.
I'll take the server.
Channel 9's traffic keeps growing. We might need it. So
I want to let you guys in on something that we have the highest number of live listeners we've ever had, and I think it may be because we're giving away a ticket. I think
I doubt it's because of us. I'd take a Tech Ed ticket over us any day.
Well, definitely over us too. I mean, come on. I mean, who cares about this stupid show? Give me a ticket to Tech Ed. So people are emailing us and they're sending us all sorts of stuff. So you guys
bribing,
bribes,
begging.
Do you guys have any last-minute words of wisdom to say to the listeners out here?
Come to the site, channel9.msdn.com. Do what you can to participate. We'll be there. Let us know what we need to do differently. Nice to hear what we're doing right, but also let us know how we can improve the site. If you're not coming to the site, if you don't like it, come and tell us why. And we want to work to make it better.
Amen, Jeff. And one last thing on this is not just the site. This is a place for you to get a chance to talk to our developers. There's just about 400 Microsoft employees on there actively posting and listening. The whole company is watching. Don't think for a minute that there isn't a single executive in the company who's not curious about what you have to say, that this is just 5 guys off on a jihad. This is something the whole company is watching. This is a place for you to tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. Give us feedback, talk to the guys who are building the products, and also help us build a better channel, like Jeff said.
Very good.
Cool.
Listen, I want to thank you guys, and we'll let you go, and we'll give away the ticket. And thanks for coming on the show. And
yeah, thanks, guys.
And
hey, guys, thank you for what you guys do, too. You guys are, there's nothing more powerful than a customer evangelist, and I have to say you guys are amazing.
Well, I got to tell you, nothing says thank you like a big fat check.
I think I need to start writing cartoons now.
Rory, is there going to be any more cartoons?
I have one in my head, actually. The thing about the cartoons is that I'm basically working quite a bit more than full-time right now, and the cartoons typically take at least 3 hours to do. Yeah. So it's hard to find the time, but I've had one in my head that's ready to come out, and I want to get it out soon so that it's actually relevant. But yeah, there are definitely cartoons in the works. So.
Is there a Channel 9 spin to any of them?
What'd you say?
Is there a Channel 9 spin to any of your cartoons coming up?
Well, yeah, actually, I was speaking specifically. I always have like 5 or 6 cartoons in my head, and one of them right now is absolutely Channel 9 specific.
Wow,
so.
Can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. Thanks again for having us. We appreciate all the love, and keep doing what you're doing.
You bet. We'll never stop.
Cool. All right, guys.
We'll see you, Tech Ed.
All right, we'll see you there.
Sweet.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Yeah, see you later.
Well, I've never felt more like a pimp in my life. I mean, we've used 12 megabits of bandwidth here, but there's 130, 140 people out there now listening. And everybody wants to know who's the lucky winner of the trip to Tech Ed. And we have our computer programs have picked a winner at random.
The white lab coats. Yeah. Ticker tape.
Are you all ready? I'll be right back. I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I'm not quite ready, actually. I think we should build a little bit of tension here.
I got to find... Hang on a second.
This is actually kind of entertaining. I mean, there's actually somebody out there waiting on the edge of his or her seat wondering if...
There was one more chapter of Coding Slave I have to finish.
Right.
Yeah, could I get some unscheduled technical difficulties in here now? I think maybe.
All right, well, enough fooling around. The moment you've all been waiting for, the winner of the trip to Tech Ed Compliments of Microsoft is none other than Bill Harris from the Washington Department of Labor and Industries.
Bravo.
Bill, congratulations. On behalf of me and Rory and the crew, I would like to thank you for listening to .NET Rocks today. Man, what a great show.
One of the requirements, though, actually, of accepting the ticket is you have to get our names tattooed on your nipples. So
You're insane, man. I'm not going to listen to you.
I just want to make sure people know what the requirements are, okay? Know what you're getting into. All right. Anyway, see you guys later.
Well, Bill, we'll see you at Tech Ed, and for everybody else, keep listening to .NET Rocks.